Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Bank of CoinX, the home of rare coins, hidden treasures, and unbelievable coin values. If you love discovering valuable coins and shocking mint errors, smash that like button, subscribe, and stay till the end, because the number one $half on this list is absolutely insane. Before you spend another old $half, stop, because one tiny silver coin hiding in your pocket change could secretly be worth not hundreds, but thousands of dollars. And today, we're counting down the top 5 most valuable old rare USA $half coins ever discovered, including one coin that collectors fought over for more than $100,000. Imagine holding a single, ordinary-looking $half in your hand and realizing that this exact coin carries the full weight of America's economic struggle, political tension, cultural change, and the quiet transformation of everyday money. This is the story of the 1974 Kennedy $half, a coin born in an era when the United States was redefining itself, when trust in government was shaken. Inflation was rising, and precious metals were disappearing from circulation, and this coin became a silent witness to it all. The 1974 $half is not just a piece of copper, nickel, and history. It is the result of decisions made behind closed doors at the U.S. Mint, pressure from collectors, panic from the public, and a nation still emotionally connected to the image of President John F. Kennedy. More than a decade after his assassination, by 1974, silver was gone from circulating $half, and many Americans still did not realize it, fully believing these coins might still carry hidden value. People hoarded earlier dates, searched their change, and ignored newer coins like this one, causing the 1974 $half to circulate less than expected, making it a sleeper in American pockets. The Kennedy design itself had already become iconic, with Gilroy Roberts' powerful portrait on the obverse showing Kennedy facing left, calm, strong, and eternal, while Frank Gasparo's reverse, featuring the presidential seal, carried symbolism of authority, unity, and endurance. Yet in 1974, this design represented something different. It symbolized the end of an era, the end of silver money, and the beginning of modern fiat coinage, the U.S. Mint struck the 1974 $half in massive numbers at both Philadelphia and Denver, responding to ongoing coin shortages from the early 1970s. Shortages caused by hoarding, rising metal prices, and public mistrust. People believed coins were worth more than their face value, and that belief alone removed millions from circulation. The 1974 $half became part of the government's effort to restore confidence and normalize commerce, even as inflation eroded purchasing power behind the scenes. Mint officials debated production costs, durability, and public acceptance. Copper nickel-clad was cheaper and longer lasting, but many Americans hated it, calling it fake money, toy coins, or government deception. Yet the mint continued, and the 1974 $half rolled off presses by the tens of millions, becoming one of the most produced $half of the decade, and yet rarely used in daily transactions. Stores avoided $half. Banks stored them, and the public ignored them, creating a strange contradiction, a coin made to circulate that barely did for collectors. The 1974 $half holds deeper intrigue because within these massive mintages exist subtle varieties, errors, and condition rarities. Sharply struck examples with full hair detail on Kennedy and strong eagle feathers command attention, while high-grade uncirculated coins revealed the true artistry of the design-proof versions struck in San Francisco showcase mirror-like fields, frosted devices, and meticulous craftsmanship, representing the mint at its technical peak, even as circulating coin quality declined. The economic backdrop of 1974 adds another layer: oil embargoes, gasoline lines, stagflation, unemployment, and political scandals surrounded the nation, and money reflected that instability. Every 1974 $half passed through hands during a time of uncertainty, when Americans questioned leadership, value, and the future, and still this coin endured, surviving decades in bank vaults, rolls, drawers, and collections, waiting to be rediscovered today. The 1974 Kennedy $half stands as a bridge between past and present, between silver tradition and modern coinage, between emotional tribute and economic reality. It is a coin that tells a quiet, powerful story of change, resilience, and adaptation. A story hidden in plain sight, one that most people overlook, but collectors, historians, and those who truly understand money recognize as a crucial chapter in American numismatic history. And once you understand what this coin represents, you will never look at a $50 the same way again. Imagine holding a single coin in your hand and realizing that it carries the weight of American grief, political change, cultural transformation, and quiet financial power all at the same time. This is not just a 50-cent piece. This is the 1972 Kennedy $50 coin, born less than a decade after one of the most shocking moments in United States history, a coin that reflects a nation trying to move forward while still holding on to memory, legacy, and identity. And today, we are going to dive deep into the full professional history of the 1972 $50, from the emotional origins of the Kennedy design to the economic pressures that reshaped American money from the inside out. And by the end of this story, you will never look at this coin the same way again, because the 1972 $50 is not about silver wealth or flashy rarity. It is about survival, transition, and hidden stories that most people have never been told. The story truly begins in November of 1963, when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and the nation was plunged into collective mourning, and almost immediately, the U.S. Mint began discussions about honoring the fallen president on circulating coinage, replacing Benjamin Franklin on the $50 with Kennedy was seen as a powerful tribute, and by 1964, the Kennedy $50 was released and instantly pulled from circulation by the public as a keepsake and symbol of remembrance, creating an unexpected coin shortage that would haunt the denomination for years. By the time we reach 1972, the Kennedy $50 had already gone through massive changes. Silver content had been reduced in 1965 and then completely eliminated by 1971, meaning the 1972 $50 was fully clad made of copper nickel bonded to a pure copper core, representing a new era of American coinage driven by rising metal prices, inflation, and global economic pressure. The year 1972 sits at a critical crossroads in U.S. history. The Vietnam War was ongoing. Inflation was rising, confidence in government was weakening, and everyday Americans were feeling financial strain. And all of that pressure showed up in the nation's coinage, including the $50, which was increasingly unpopular in circulation. Vending machines did not accept it, cash registers had no place for it, and banks ordered fewer and fewer rolls, making the $50 a forgotten giant of American money. The 1972 Kennedy $50 was struck at two mints, Philadelphia and Denver, with Philadelphia producing coins with no mint mark and Denver coins marked with AD. And while mintages were high, especially at Denver, the reality is that most of these coins never circulated heavily. They went straight from banks into drawers, jars, and storage boxes, slowly disappearing from everyday use, which is why today so many examples survive in relatively decent condition. Despite being more than 50 years old, the obverse of the coin features Gilroy Roberts' iconic portrait of Kennedy facing left with the word liberty above, and the national motto, "In God We Trust," split across the field with the date 1972 below, while the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparro, displays the presidential seal with a heraldic eagle shield, olive branch, and arrows symbolizing peace and strength, surrounded by the words United States of America and $50. And this design choice was not accidental. It reinforced Kennedy, not just as a man, but as a symbol of executive authority and national unity during uncertain times. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 1972 $50 is that while it is common in circulated grades, it becomes surprisingly difficult to find in truly high mint state condition, especially with strong strikes, clean fields, and original luster. And collectors who focus on registry sets know that top-grade examples can command strong premiums, particularly when certified at MS66 and above, because quality control at the time was inconsistent and bag marks were common due to the large size and heavy handling of the coins. Another hidden layer of the 1972 $50 story lies in the broader disappearance of the denomination from American life. By this point, the $50 was no longer needed for daily commerce. Inflation had eroded its purchasing power, and Americans preferred smaller denominations, which caused the coin to become a victim of its own size and legacy. And this makes the 1972 issue a symbol of the slow fading of a once dominant Coin that had been part of American transactions since the late 18th century, there are no major double-die varieties. Officially recognized for circulation strikes in 1972, but collectors still search for minor errors such as off-center, strikes, clipped planchettes, and die cracks, which can add interest and value, and these errors serve as reminders that even modern clad coinage tells stories of human machinery and imperfection at the mint. The 1972 half-dollar also represents a psychological shift in collecting because many people who saved these coins did so not for profit, but out of habit, nostalgia, or respect for Kennedy. And decades later, those same saved coins have flooded the market, keeping prices modest while still fueling one of the largest collector bases in U.S. numismatics. And that is why this coin remains so important. It is accessible, educational, and deeply connected to American memory. In the end, the 1972 Kennedy half-dollar is not about getting rich quick. It is about understanding how money reflects society, politics, and emotion. It is about a nation adapting to change, honoring its past while quietly letting go of traditions. And when you hold this coin, you are holding a snapshot of America in transition, a silent witness to economic reform, cultural evolution, and the slow disappearance of a once powerful denomination. And that is why the 1972 half-dollar deserves your attention, your respect, and its place in the long-living story of American coinage. Imagine holding a single coin that quietly passed through millions of hands during one of the most overlooked yet powerful transition periods in modern American history. And that coin is the 1994 Kennedy half-dollar apiece that most people dismiss as ordinary, but which actually carries the weight of political memory, economic change, minting evolution, and collector psychology all at once. And today, we are diving deep into the full professional story of the 1994 half-dollar, not as a quick overview, but as a serious historical journey that could easily stretch into a 2-hour documentary. Because to understand this coin, you must understand America in the early 1990s, a nation adjusting to the end of the Cold War, redefining its economic priorities and slowly watching physical money disappear from everyday life, and the 1994 Kennedy half-dollar sits right at the center of that shift, struck during a time when half-dollars were no longer commonly used in circulation. Yet still demanded by law, tradition, and national identity, this coin carries the portrait of President John F. Kennedy, a design first introduced in 1964, only months after his assassination, making it one of the most emotionally charged designs in U.S. coinage history. And by 1994, that emotional legacy had matured into a symbol of continuity rather than mourning, yet the meaning remained powerful because Kennedy represented youth optimism and unfinished promise, and every half-dollar struck still carried that message forward. The 1994 half-dollar was produced in a world where silver was long gone from circulating U.S. coinage, replaced by a copper nickel-clad composition, reflecting economic realities, inflation pressures, and the government's need to produce durable, low-cost coinage. And while some collectors dismiss clad coins as less valuable, the truth is that clad-era coins, like the 1994 half-dollar, represent the longest and most stable monetary system the United States has ever operated under. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced these coins in significant numbers, yet they were rarely seen in daily transactions because casinos, collectors, banks, and Federal Reserve storage absorbed most of them, creating an artificial scarcity in everyday life, which is why many Americans today have never spent a half-dollar at all. And this disconnect between production and circulation is a critical part of the 1994 half-dollar story, because it shows how coinage can exist more as a symbol than a tool. The design itself remained unchanged, with Frank Gasparo's strong profile of Kennedy on the obverse projecting confidence, resolve, and forward motion, while the reverse features the presidential seal with the heraldic eagle, clutching arrows, and an olive branch representing America's constant balance between strength and peace. And by 1994, this imagery took on new meaning as the U.S. stood as the world's lone superpower after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And the half-dollar quietly reflected that status in metal form. The minting quality of 1994 coins varies significantly, making this year especially interesting for collectors because weak strikes, bag marks, and dull luster are common in circulation strikes, While high-grade examples with strong details, sharp hairlines and clean fields are far scarcer than mintage numbers, which introduces the critical concept of condition. Rarity: a coin can be common in quantity, yet rare in top condition. And the 1994 half dollar perfectly demonstrates this principle-proofed versions. Struck at the San Francisco Mint, add another layer to the story, produced specifically for collectors with mirror fields frosted devices and exceptional detail. These proof coins represent the U.S. Mint, acknowledging that circulating coinage was becoming less relevant, while collector demand was becoming more important, and this shift would only accelerate in the years to come. The economic context of 1994 also matters because this was a period of relative stability, low inflation, and growing consumer confidence, which meant coins were treated casually, often stored, forgotten, or spent without thought. And that neglect is exactly why pristine examples today are difficult to find, making the 1994 half dollar a sleeper coin, one that rewards patience, knowledge, and careful searching. And when you examine this coin closely, you are not just looking at metal, you are looking at a moment when America still believed in physical money, still honored its fallen leaders through everyday objects, and still maintained traditions, even as technology and banking systems were quietly preparing to move on. And this is why the 1994 Kennedy half dollar deserves serious attention, because it is not just a coin, it is a historical document, a cultural artifact, and a silent witness to change. And by the end of this deep dive, you will never look at a half dollar the same way again, because once you understand the full story of the 1994 half dollar, you realize that ordinary coins often carry the most extraordinary histories hidden in plain sight, waiting for those who are willing to look closer. Imagine holding a single 50-cent coin in your hand and realizing that it represents the exact moment America quietly changed its money forever. The 1971 Kennedy half dollar is not just another coin, it is a turning point, a dividing line between silver and base metal, between an old monetary promise and a new economic reality. And if you really understand what happened in 1971, you understand far more than a coin. You understand inflation, politics, public trust, and why millions of Americans unknowingly lost real value in their pockets. This coin was born at the crossroads of history, only 8 years after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, when his image was still powerful, emotional, and symbolic. And yet, by 1971, the nation was facing pressure from rising silver prices, global economic strain, and a government forced to make difficult choices. Behind closed doors, the Kennedy half dollar had already been reduced from 90% silver to 40% silver in the years before, but 1971 is the year the silver finally disappeared, completely replaced by copper and nickel layered together to look familiar but fundamentally different. And that quiet change shocked collectors, confused the public, and created one of the most misunderstood coins in modern American history: the Philadelphia and Denver mints struck hundreds of millions of these coins intended for circulation. Yet Americans hoarded earlier silver versions so aggressively that half dollars vanished from everyday use, making the 1971 issue part of a strange era where a circulating coin almost never circulated. The design itself remained unchanged. Frank Gasparo's dignified portrait of Kennedy still carried the weight of national memory, while the reverse presidential seal with the eagle shield and olive branch spoke of strength and unity, but the metal beneath told a different story. A story of cost-cutting, survival, and economic pressure. Many people today still believe the 1971 half dollar contains silver and thousands search their change, hoping to strike hidden treasure. Yet this misconception is part of what makes the coin so fascinating, because value is not always about precious metal. It is about condition, errors, varieties, and history. Mint state examples with blazing luster, sharp strikes, and untouched surfaces can be worth many times face value, especially when certified, while rare errors, such as clipped planchettes, off-center strikes, doubled dies, and wrong planchette errors can transform a common coin into a collector prize worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The 1971 half dollar also marks the beginning of the clad era Kennedy series, which would run for decades, influencing how Americans viewed the denomination, eventually pushing it out of daily commerce and into drawers, collections, and vaults. This coin reflects a moment when the United States stepped fully away from precious metal coinage in everyday money, just months before the end of the gold standard, reshaping the global financial system forever. So when you look at a 1971 Kennedy half-dollar, you are not just looking at 50 cents, you are holding a symbol of transition, a relic of policy decisions, emotion, memory, and economics fused into a single round piece of metal. And by the end of this video, you will never look at this coin the same way again, because its true story is deeper, heavier, and far more powerful than its face value suggests.